Welcome to the Putback here on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider and host of the show. Today, we've got a special mailbag edition of the Putback where we're answering your questions about the Knicks coaching search, the Knicks offseason, the NBA offseason in general. We've got the draft coming up. Joining me today is SNY's social media guru, my friend and yours, Matt Spendley, the Big Spend. He's going to be relaying your questions to me, and we'll get right into it.
What's up, Ian? How's the offseason been so far? I know it's been busy with the coaching search. How you feeling?
Yeah, that hasn't started yet for me. Let's talk in mid-July. That'll be my offseason.
All right, we'll hit you up. When you're on the beach, we'll check in on you. Let's get right into it. All right, our guy, Alex B. from Twitter, who we've had on the show before, Knicks Central. It's well documented that the Knicks reached out to 5 different teams for permission to interview their employed head coaches. Do you think it was at all a smokescreen to avoid tampering charges for Wynn, or if they circle back to Jason Kidd, who you've reported on recently? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's about the tampering charges. It might be, but I think more so what happened with them reaching out there was they just didn't have a shoe-in replacement when they decided to let Tom Thibodeau go, right? I mean, this is very different from Leon Rose's first coaching search where you kind of had Thibodeau all along, but you took your time and you interviewed dozens of candidates and you ended up with Thibodeau. This time there is no coach at the end of the line where you know you're going to end up with him, and maybe you go through a process and end up with that coach anyway. So that's why they were reaching out to those teams to see if their coaches were available to discuss the possibility of coming over to New York. And I don't see it as much of a tampering thing as it was just, hey, we have to do our due diligence. We have to find out who's available, who isn't available. We need to know about the landscape as we embark on this coaching search. And I think that's where you are with this thing right now.
Right. And speaking of Kidd, our next question goes right into that too from our guy, KNYT Hoops. Hey, Ian, is Jason Kidd still the favorite to land the Knicks job at the moment? So just generally kind of painting the landscape where we're at right now based on what you know with Kidd and then with other candidates. What are we looking at right at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that I've done these enough to know that there are so many factors beyond anything I would know in the moment where it's hard for me to pick a favorite. I'm sorry, that's probably a cop-out for you guys, but that's just the reality of these coaching searches and kind of there's so many different factors at play. But, we know, obviously, that Taylor Jenkins interviewed with the Knicks, Mike Brown scheduled to interview with the Knicks, and Jason Kidd, to my knowledge, as of earlier this week, was still a possibility. So that's kind of where it sits. I do think that, Jenkins and Brown have been, the focus. I don't know if there's a list, but I think they're in that top tier of the Knicks options. And then Kidd, obviously more of a wild card because he is under contract with Dallas. But I think they're still kind of waiting to see there on a final decision. But to me, that's a wild card. So I guess if I had to pick one, if you're making me pick one, I would probably pick Taylor Jenkins, given all the factors that we know about.
You're allowed 3 cop-out answers. That's one that you've used already. So just know we got a ways to go, but you're good. Ian, I know you also reported that Jenkins and Brown are interviewing with the Knicks this week. Is that correct?
Yes. I believe I know Jenkins got the first interview. I believe it already happened. I'm not 1,000% sure on that.
Okay, got it. One more Kidd question from Knicks Chat 112. With Jason Kidd apparently still in the mix, what is a possible pathway to him being interviewed / potentially hired? So we know that the Mavericks denied the Knicks permission, but he also hasn't been ruled out as a candidate. So just from Knicks Chat's question, what would that look like if that was to heat up in any way?
Yeah, as it sits, Dallas has zero interest in giving New York any kind of permission to speak with Kidd. They've already denied it once, so we know that, and that's still the case. I've been checking in pretty regularly over there, and Kidd has been engaged on all things Dallas as far as I can tell. He was involved in that Cooper Flag meeting. I don't know if they did a workout too, but he was involved in that. So he's been acting like the Dallas Mavericks head coach. And I think what it would take there is Jason Kidd to make things uncomfortable in terms of taking something to ownership or Nico Harrison. They just, by the way, Kidd and Harrison happen to share the same agency with Excel Sports, which I find interesting. But it would take Kidd kind of making things ugly behind the scenes and, demanding the chance to leave for New York, or appealing to ownership's human side and saying, hey, this is a dream job of mine. You guys will get compensation. Can you at least let me look into it and see what the details are? So it's one of those two avenues, but it starts with Kidd or his representation pushing the envelope a little bit, forcing Dallas to let them out and let them talk to New York. And, I think that's there are a lot of hurdles before you get to the point where Dallas throws their hands up and says, all right, we'll let you talk to them. But that's kind of where it starts. It starts with Kidd or his representation getting the ball rolling, since Dallas has declined the Knicks' attempt to talk to Kidd above the table, so to speak.
Got it. Good note there on Harrison and Kidd's age, and also. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll see how that ends up playing out. Shifting gears a little bit, but staying on the coaching search, Ian. Nicholas Brax 10. Have you heard about Terry Stotts, Dave Bliss, or Jerry Stackhouse potentially getting an interview?
I have not. I know Jerry Stackhouse, I believe he has a close relationship with William Wesley and the Knicks. They've been talking about casting a wide net and talking to different candidates, maybe not in a formal interview setting, but at least checking in on many different candidates. So, yeah, I'd be surprised if they didn't check in on Stotts, who's, I believe, currently with Golden State, and Stackhouse. With Dave Bliss, former Knicks assistant coach, done a great job in Oklahoma City. He and Josh Longstaff, another former Knicks assistant from that staff, done very well for themselves. So I'm sure if they haven't formally reached out, they've done their homework on these guys who could be out there. But I do think that at the end of the day, you're looking at more of a Stotts type, just in terms of a coach with experience than you would be a Bliss, who does not have head coaching experience in the NBA.
Sounds good. I want to jump ahead to another one because you segued me perfectly, Ian. So our guy, Unc Brutus, the mayor, be true for life. Hey, Ian, have the Knicks shut down the idea of getting a first-time head coach, and are they singularly focused on getting one of the ones that have experience? So when they're approached with all these different options, first-time head coach experience, do you think that matters to them? Where do you think that stands in the coaching search as they're evaluating all options?
Just my guess, based on the landscape, I don't know that they've ruled anything out, but I think it's fair to expect them to hire a coach with experience, because obviously they did say in their statement they're singularly focused on winning a championship, and if you want to get there, it's to me, you're putting yourself at longer odds if you hire someone who's never done the job. So yeah, I think you can assume that it's going to be a head coach with experience, whether it's Jenkins, Mike Brown, Jason Kidd, somebody else. I can't see them bringing in an assistant who doesn't have the experience, because of the level that they're trying to reach, the level they're trying to get back to and get beyond. You put yourself kind of behind the eight ball if you come in with somebody without any experience.
So speaking of experience, one of the questions was just all caps Mark Jackson, which isn't a question. It's more just posing us to talk about him. So our guy Ducard Luman is asking about Mark Jackson. So Ian, I ask you, Mark Jackson.
Yeah, I know that there's been kind of a public push for Mark Jackson, Stephen A. Smith, and others. And look, I think Mark Jackson, just seeing his work and knowing people I know who know him, who really speak so highly of him, I hope he gets a second chance at coaching here. I don't think it's going to be in New York. I think that, things would have to take a left turn for them to go down the road and end up with Mark Jackson. But I do think he does deserve a second chance. I just don't think it's going to happen here.
Fair enough. All right, another former player, another former point guard, Golson Ronald's asking, why isn't Celtics lead assistant Sam Cassell a potential candidate for the Knicks head coaching job? And I know you've mentioned more candidates could emerge, but he's not a name that we've heard yet. So is that a name that you could potentially see entering the fray?
I mean, I checked in shortly after Thibodeau was let go and asked if there was any contact there, or did they reach out to Boston? And to that point, which must have been a little early last week, they hadn't. They hadn't heard about Knicks reaching out. Now, to me, if you're canvassing the league, he's an obvious name that you have to canvass. But yeah, I'll go back to what I was saying a minute ago, which was I have to assume this thing ends up with a head coach coming here who has significant head coaching experience in the NBA, that's going to matter. I think you can't hire somebody who has zero experience, because if you are where the Knicks are, and this bar is very high for the next head coach, whoever it is, he has a very high bar to meet, very high standards that he's going to be judged by based on what Tom Thibodeau did here and where he got the Knicks. So this is not a job where you want to throw somebody's feet into the fire and let them learn on the fly. It's going to be somebody who's established.
Sure. And just to be specific on that point, too, because I know a name that we've spent time talking about and you've reported on is Johnnie Bryant, who was an assistant coach with the Knicks, has been a name out there. And he, of course, would be a first-time head coach. So have you heard anything else with Johnnie Bryant that we should be aware of? And let me make sure I shout out our guy. Anytime Knicks, Jay from East NY is asking about Johnnie Bryant and his potential.
Yeah, Jay, Brutus, it's awesome to hear these familiar names. Thank you guys for the questions. Yeah, I just heard, I guess it was late last week still, that Johnny, it was more of a longer shot there. When you're talking about the coaches who've been in or will be in for interviews, the guys that we've already talked about, I think those are the guys who have much higher odds of landing this thing than a Johnnie Bryant. And I don't think that's a shot at Bryant at all. It's just the reality of where he is and where he would be if the Knicks hired him, which is a first-time head coach. Understanding that he was the associate head coach here, had a lot of close relationships with players, particularly Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley. I know those guys were close to him. I'm sure many others were too. By all accounts, has done well in Cleveland, but I don't think that he is an odds-on favorite at all here at the moment. I think it's a longer shot now. Maybe the Knicks go through this interview process. They decide it's not Taylor Jenkins. It's not Mike Brown. You shut the door on Jason Kidd. He stays in Dallas. Then you have to look at these other options, and maybe your criteria changes. But as we sit here today, the middle of this week, I think Johnnie Bryant is still a long shot for this job.
All right, fair enough. We'll keep an eye on his name. I hate to belabor the same experience bump, but I want to make sure I got one more from somebody that I want to answer, and I'll combine this one into two because we also got someone on YouTube that's asking. Our guy Al Branch on Twitter, hearing reports Knicks may pivot to college coaches if Kidd, Jenkins, Brown don't pan out. If this is true, why haven't we heard any names? And then I'll combine it with Hush Hay on YouTube is asking, could the Knicks look overseas similar to a Jordy Fernandez type hire when I was coach for Team Canada has been involved? So as we're talking about experience, obviously we've been talking about NBA head coaching experience, but do you think that those are any ranks that they would potentially consider and will again enter the fray?
Well, what we know is Jay Wright, Leon Rose, Knicks president, and Jay Wright, former Villanova coach, have a strong relationship, close relationship, and Leon Rose knew that Wright was comfortable in retirement and was not going to be, open to coming to New York. So you cross him off the list in terms of college coaches. And yeah, I the same thing. I just don't think that, if this thing ends up where the Knicks want it to end up, I don't think you end up with a college coach, a coach from overseas, David Blatt, Jordy Fernandez type. I don't think that's where they want to end up. If they do ultimately end up there, it means that the plans, plan A, plan B, whatever you want to call it, did not pan out, and they had to settle for whatever, option C, option D, whatever you want to call it. I just don't think that that's at the forefront right now. But until we see, pen to paper, a press release, a press conference, anything's possible. I just can't see it. I expect this to end up with this search to end up with a head coach with significant NBA experience.
Fair enough. Last one before we kind of segue into some other offseason topics. John Gersberger wants to know, with the draft coming up and trades likely to be made, doesn't it make sense that the front office would decide on a candidate faster than when they hired Thibs in 2020, which seemed like a lengthy search process? So a timeline here, do you think the offseason starting to move with the finals potentially being done as soon as Thursday, do you think that timeline could potentially matter for them, that they would like to get a candidate sooner rather than later to kind of advance their offseason moves?
I do think that I don't want to speak for Leon Rose, but I do think that in a perfect world, you do get somebody in by the end of this week, early next week. But they have talked a lot about, the idea that this is going to be a long search. We're going to do our due diligence. And if that's the case, you've interviewed, you've interviewed two head coaches. Does that mean you're going to bring in a bunch of other guys and this is going to drag beyond the draft? if you are doing your due diligence and you want to have formal interviews with these coaches, just looking at the calendar, it seems like it's going to have to. But I do think that with Jenkins in and with Brown in or coming in, I do think you're going to be able to kind of rule certain things out, and maybe one of these coaches in the interview process really puts himself head and shoulders above the rest of the field. And I think that would allow you to make a quicker decision. But yeah, we'll see. I think, perfect world, they do have somebody in place for the draft, but also they have the 50th pick, and I understand trades are going to happen, but the Knicks are not going to get involved in the Kevin Durant deal unless they're a third team. And then the other one is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's on the record speaking to an overseas outlet, I think, talking about wanting to win a championship and run it back with the Bucks. We haven't seen anything beyond that, but nothing that leads you to believe that Giannis is going to pound the table, demand a trade before the draft here.
Sure. Right before we get into all the free agency stuff and trades, because again, you segue me perfectly. Anything else on the coaching search that we haven't hit, that we didn't get asked by our lovely fans, that you want to touch on before we move on to some other transactional stuff?
Yeah, I think the one interesting thing to me was Billy Donovan with the Knicks reaching out to Chicago. I do think Chicago denied the request, obviously, but I do think that there was, some gray area there where maybe Billy had wanted to see what was going on here in New York and have a formal conversation. And then, he turns around and he gets an extension from Chicago. So he clearly benefits financially there from the Knicks' interest. And I do think the interest was real on both ends, but obviously good for Billy Donovan getting some more money there. I just wonder if anybody else is going to land an extension because of that, but that's not something that Knicks fans care about. They want to know who's going to end up here. We don't know yet, but hopefully we find out sometime soon.
For sure. And let's move right into that. So Shiz86 is asking, any truth to the Jaren Jackson Jr. rumors? The YouTube chat is buzzing about Jaren Jackson Jr. We saw the Grizzlies trade Desmond Bane to the Magic for quite the haul of draft picks. Could that portend them having a bit of a different direction? Obviously, a lot more to be seen. But with the Knicks specifically, Jaren Jackson Jr. rumors, people are asking, what do you think?
I mean, look, their messaging after the Bane trade has been, we're not going to move Ja Morant. We're not going to move Jaren Jackson Jr. The Knicks, they did hire Jaren Jackson Jr.'s dad, Jaren Jackson Sr., to work with their G League club right when Leon Rose took over, I believe, or if not soon thereafter. And you can connect the dots there in terms of, potential interest. I haven't heard anything specific to Jaren Jackson Jr. and the Knicks right now. Doesn't mean it's not real, but I haven't heard anything specific there. It would be a seismic move, and it would be kind of letting everybody know that you don't believe in the core that you put together just 12 months ago. So I'd be a little bit surprised if that kind of a caliber of trade ended up with a Jaren Jackson Jr. And not a bigger name player. But let's see. I mean, Memphis, what they're saying is they're not going to move those two guys. They have all those picks. I think it's more likely that they use those picks in a trade than they do to kind of completely blow this thing up. But yeah, ahead of the draft, a lot of these questions will be answered. And Durant is obviously interesting to everybody. To me, I'll go back to something I'd said over the weekend. I know that there are voices in Phoenix who really want to have a top line starting caliber center. And you can get that in many different ways. But obviously the Durant trade is the easiest pathway to do that. The obvious one there is Rudy Gobert in Minnesota. Minnesota, continuing to have interest. Kevin Durant reportedly not willing to re-sign there, but maybe they roll the dice like the Raptors did with Kawhi Leonard, and they just go all in and see how it works out. So, yeah, that's the one that has the whole league buzzing for obvious reasons.
Makes sense. And Ian, you've obviously been, I think, at the forefront of saying that the Knicks and Durant were never a pairing that made a lot of sense to you. And I just want to close the loop on that because obviously we've seen reports that, they are not going to pursue that. But Knicks Recap is asking, do you know why the Knicks changed their stance on trading for Durant? So, and he also says, appreciate everything you do for the community. Want to make sure I get that shout out there. So just when it comes to KD and the Knicks, kind of closing the loop on that, Ian, and what you continue to kind of hear about that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Knicks Recap. And yeah, it wasn't about like my opinion as if he's a fit or not a fit. It was more so kind of what I was hearing in terms of real interest there. And I never I heard that, it wasn't real. I know there was some reporting. I think ESPN and others talking about the Knicks having interest. Maybe they had the conversation at the trade deadline, but after that, going back several weeks, going into the end of the regular season, I don't think there was like real strong, legitimate interest in going ahead and trading for Durant and signing him to that extension at age 37. The why, I'm not as sure about. I don't know. I just, that was kind of the consistent thing coming out of at least my conversations was no on Durant. And look, I don't think that anything is going to change here. I think you can cross him off the list as we get closer to the draft, and maybe the Phoenix Suns get closer to making a move. The why is interesting to me. I don't know. I don't know it strongly enough to report. Certainly, if that changes, you'll be able to read that on SNY.TV sometime. But yeah, we'll see. I'm really curious to see where he ends up and what players are involved and how it might impact the Knicks in a tangential way.
Plugging your reporting is my job, Ian, but nice job there. You did great with it. Stainless. All right. I want to ask Derek Sullivan, Trules is asking, what are the chances one of the Brunson pals, the Villanova guys, Hart or Bridges is traded? So we know that Mikal Bridges is extension eligible this offseason. I feel like that's a big story and a big kind of building block to see how the Knicks end up going. So I'm curious both with a Mikal extension and then to answer Derek's question, what are the chances one of them is potentially traded this offseason?
I would have said, significant if Giannis Antetokounmpo was out there and had requested a trade and, had asked to come to New York, and there was kind of the winds blowing Giannis towards the Big Apple here. But I haven't heard that to date. And so outside of a deal like that, a deal where you're bringing in a headline star, and obviously in that instance, you really reshape your roster. Outside of that, I don't think the chances are high that either of these guys get moved. I think it's more likely the Knicks run it back, the Knicks add depth on the bench, and maybe a Hart or a Robinson is moved if there's an opportunity to upgrade. But I just don't see it as likely, specifically with those two guys. I mean, you gave up so much for Mikal Bridges, and that's not a reason to automatically extend him, but I would think he's much more likely to extend here and to be here for a while than he is to get moved this summer, because there's no Giannis talk and there's no player comparable to him kind of banging the table and looking to get out of his current situation that the Knicks would be interested in. And so that's kind of where it sits for me at the moment with Hart and with Bridges.
Sounds good. So we'll keep an eye on how things play out there. Just a couple other things I want to talk about. Nathan Smith's asking, could the Knicks look to get Malcolm Brogdon? And I kind of want to loop in another question that's been out there too, just about the way that the Knicks can build out this roster, given their limited cap space and given that they're kind of sitting in the middle of that apron. We know that they'll have that taxman level exception, but that also sometimes will have some apron, ramifications. So let's talk Brogdon. I know Luke Kennard's been a name out there. Some other guys that are in that space. And then right after, I'll ask you just kind of how you see the Knicks filling out the roster with other types of players.
Right. And so you hit it, Matt, with the exception. I believe it starts at $5 million. That's what they would have access to at the moment. And with Brogdon specifically, the Knicks had a chance to trade for him from Portland when he was healthy. I think that was a couple trade deadlines ago, and they didn't then. And I think that there wasn't a big appetite for him then. Is it different now? I mean, coming off an injury, what's the price going to be? They don't have a ton of money to spend. I can't give you a definitive answer, but just based on the history there and the context of it all, I'd be a little bit surprised if it was him who they turned to at the backup point guard role. I do know he's on Dallas's list. Dallas obviously needing a point guard with Kyrie Irving rehabbing from surgery. I don't know if he's at the top of Dallas's list or somewhere in the middle, but he is there, Brogdon. And so the Mavs obviously are going to dictate a lot of that point guard movement. Knicks, to me, if you're looking for a backup there, I know that, there was even some kind of canvassing during the year of the backup point guard market. So I would assume they go back there in the offseason. And then, Matt, you said it, the exception, you're going to have veterans minimum exceptions. I believe if you use that exception, you do get hard capped at the second apron, though. Check me on that. And then if the Knicks wanted to, they could trade off some salary and dip under that apron, and then you get to the full mid-level, which I think starts at $14 million, and then you're capped, I believe, at the first apron. So a lot of ramifications there for the money for the Knicks right now, but the idea that they even have wiggle room to spend it all, I think, is you go back to Jalen Brunson, his extension, him taking less to come back here and extend, and that's giving the Knicks the financial wiggle room that they currently have, and that'll be the case too for next summer. No matter where you land with Bridges, if you extend them, Knicks, any wiggle room they have will be because of what Brunson chose to do last summer with the extension.
Right. And then once they hire a coach, we'll have a lot more time to talk about what free agents they could get, some other names that'll be out there. I'm sure there'll be some others that are out there and that you will report. Ian, I want to give you one more chance. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on from all of our great questions? And thank you, everyone, for submitting, that you want to hit on before we call it a day and send it to another part of the show?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has any that have just dropped, but I think we hit everything that all the topics that I think matter. Certainly, if there are any others, maybe we'll get to them next time we do a mailbag. Maybe I'll write something and answer some questions. But really do appreciate everybody for dropping those questions in and for checking in with us here at the Putback. Matt, appreciate you steering the ship for us today. And I did actually take questions from a couple other big-time Knicks fans, Joe Cruz, Randy Cruz, founders and CEOs of the Hoops in the Sun basketball tournament in Orchard Beach. Goes on every summer. They're entering their 25th summer. So Joe and Randy had a couple of Knicks questions for me. We talked about their tournament, which comes, I think it opens up actually this weekend at Orchard Beach. It's always a great environment, always a fun place to watch some high-level basketball, high-level outdoor basketball. So let's hear from Randy. Let's hear from Joe. We got two special guests here with a question for our mailbag. We have Joe and Randy Cruz, the Cruz brothers, CEOs and founders of the Hoops in the Sun basketball tournament at Orchard Beach all summer long. Fantastic tournament. 25th anniversary for the tournament. I have a couple questions for these guys about that tournament. But first, I think they have a couple Knicks questions. What do you guys have for me?
I have one. I had to ask you personally because I know you do a great job covering them the whole entire season and beyond and in the off season. How do you feel about Tom Thibodeau's how you say early resignation? I don't agree with it personally. I think that he's one of the only coaches that really, dedicated his craft to making sure this organization is back into respectable manners. But for them to do this at this point in time and them not having an end goal right now with all these coaches' names coming up, just wanted to see how you felt about the Thibs situation.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, to me, there was every reason in the world to bring him back from the outside looking in. Obviously, 51 wins, getting to the conference finals, first time in 25 years, not to mention the $30+ million extension that he has on the books. So, yeah, I just thought because of those reasons, he was going to be back. Obviously, the Knicks decided otherwise. I thought he certainly deserved the chance to coach a team one more year at least, and Knicks felt otherwise. And to me, now it's about what this next coach brings, and he's got to bring a lot because Tom Thibodeau has set the bar very high. 51 regular season wins this past year, conference finals. I mean, if you fall short of those thresholds or even, more importantly, the conference finals, everybody's going to kind of be scratching their head and looking sideways at the coaching decision that you made this offseason. So, front office, really, put themselves under the microscope with this move. They've got to hire the right coach. They've got to hire the coach that could get the Knicks to that next level, which is getting through the conference finals into the finals. So high bar for the next coach. I thought that it made all the sense in the world to bring Tom Thibodeau back for at least one more year. They felt otherwise, and so let's see where it goes from here. But a lot of scrutiny for that next head coach, whoever it may be.
So my follow-up question to you, Ian, is do the Knicks even come back to Thibodeau and say, listen, we made a big mistake. There's nobody on the market better than you. We made a huge mistake. I don't know how you can really make those ends meet again, but is that an option at all, Ian?
Look, I feel like men our age, we've probably all swung back if we ended a relationship and had second thoughts and tried to swing back and
Mhm.
see if there was a chance. I don't think that's going to happen in this case, though. I don't think Thibodeau, I'm sure was not happy with how things ended. And
Mhm.
yeah, I can't see it happening.
Listen, Ian, I'll start with this. Joe and I have known you for a very long time, probably 15 plus years in the game. Just seeing you cover this team from New York Post and ESPN New York, and now doing a great job at SNY. And I see your background, all your credentials, for everywhere you've been. How does it feel? Because you covered this team for such a long time, just as a person, as a fan of just now you're covering a really good team, a good squad, uh, a better organization than what it was back in the days. You're playing basketball, meaningful basketball in April, May, and hopefully one day in June. Just you as a fan, how has your experience been covering this team now as we go later on in the springtime?
Yeah, I mean, like just as a reporter, playoff atmosphere, it's just fun to be there and to cover a series and to cover how a series unfolds and, adjustments over the course of a series. There's always storylines, different narratives to follow. And then the basketball, is the basketball. And it's really, really fun to cover that, over the course of 4, 5, 6, 7 games, whatever it is. So that's been a lot of fun in terms of covering the postseason. And, for me, win, lose, or draw. I don't really get too involved in terms of loving, not loving, and whatever happens. I just try to find an interesting way to look at what's going on. But I will say this: I think I'm a little strange because I got used to the losing and the
Mhm.
dysfunction and the firing a coach and the firing of a team president and hiring and the palace intrigue. I got used to that, so I was out of my comfort zone when this team started winning. I'll be honest, but it has been fun to cover, meaningful basketball in the spring. It's a great point, Randy. Just
Yeah.
being in the Garden and the visiting arena is just loudest places that I've been in my career, and it's been a real pleasure and a
Hmm.
privilege to be in those places.
Yeah. If I got one more real quick, uh, generically, what can the Knicks do to kind of take the good from this year and kind of follow that Indiana path? Because they made the conference finals last year, they lost, but now they're in the NBA finals this year. So what can we do? Like what are the good things that we take away from this year to bring back next year?
It's a great point, Randy, about the Pacers' path and how they've done it, because that's exactly what the Knicks want to do. In my mind, it's depth, right? It's figuring out who you want back from a Landry Shamet, a Campaign, a Precious Achua, a Miles McBride, and how you want to upgrade that depth. And so that to me is the most direct path this offseason. Obviously, there's going to be trade opportunities. The Knicks explore those aggressively. I think obviously it depends on the fit, but I think the most likely path is going depth. And then do you look at, a backup point guard who can spell Jalen Brunson a little bit more, who could play with Brunson? I look at Tyus Jones out of Phoenix because I know that there was mutual interest with New York and Jones. Last offseason, he's a free agent, and I'm wondering about Boston. My buddy Tim Bontemps had a good point about Al Horford, the idea that maybe Boston, because they're trying to trim salary, he might be available. Obviously, great veteran presence, has a relationship
Hmm.
with Carl Town. So that's kind of what I'm looking at now as we're still in the middle of this coaching search. But I agree. I think just filling out that depth is a key for this club, no matter what happens in the offseason. And I appreciate you guys asking me about the Knicks, but I want to ask you more importantly about the beach this summer. You guys have been doing it 25 years. What is it like to be 25 years in, and what excites you at this point about the tournament?
Tag, you're it, Ran.
Um, Listen, 2025 sounds like a long time. You've been there a few times, indoor sites, outdoor, obviously at the beach, and just seeing myself and Joe and our entire staff grow, mature, to bring what this tournament is now. We start this weekend. Was supposed to start last weekend, but the weather got to us. But listen, just keeping Dad's legacy alive, creating our own path in this social media, digital world the last couple of years, and just being different, being creative, a brand new of teams are coming in from the youth side, from the adult side. It's really like a new day at the beach, and that's what we love to do. We're bringing new talent, new coaches, new teams, new auras, and see what works, what doesn't work. But just overall, just competing in a good way, and always trying to be better, find something new and different to bring to the table every single summer. And listen, me and Joe are here doing this show with you. You've been there, your post and ESPN New York, and indoor games and spring league games, and you've always been a constant supporter of our program. Doesn't matter who our sponsors are or whatever we're doing, no matter what, you always check in on us, do a podcast, come by the venue, check us out. So we definitely love you and appreciate you for being there for almost 15 years and supporting us. And without you and other people in around the country and the world, we truly thank you for that.
For me, Ian, it's for me to see the kids that have been playing at 10 years old now playing college basketball and coming to play into the unlimited division. It's like RJ Davis and Kadari Richmond and
Even Obi now, NBA Finals.
Obadiah Toppin now being NBA Finals. Like these were kids in our program at 10 years old where we're trying to scoot them off the court every halftime, every time they want to shoot the basketball. So now, like them, just following their dream and just to be a part of that dream, be a platform, be a pedestal for them to kind of use this opportunity for them to elevate their game. I mean, it's surreal. Like I feel old. I remember when Ian was young and just come in the game, and I told him, I said, "Listen, you want to take a chance to do street basketball? Come over here." And ever since then, it's been a marriage made in heaven, and seen you grow along the way, married, kids, like so surreal. So I think time has just elapsed. I think just kind of like understanding what has happened along those 25 years, the good, the bad, and different moments. And I think that if you learn from those situations, hopefully we have another 25 years to offer service.
Just a tremendous impact on the community. Summer in, summer out. You guys are there, do a fantastic job with the tournament. I advise everybody who loves street basketball or just basketball in general, get out to the beach, watch a game. It's a great venue. It's a lot of fun. You'll definitely be entertained. And just hats off to you guys for keeping it going and for reaching 25. And here's to many more.